Hi everyone, today I want to talk about why we read books and why we should not switch to purely videos and social media, and I guess not social media in particular, but I think that a lot of people have the idea that movies are super fun, right? Movies are super fun, but we should try to refrain from watching movies and we should instead read books because they're just better, right? I think this is a concept that's really hammered down by schools and by our culture because a lot of people just think oh, if that kid is reading a book, and especially if it's thick and if it's it has no pictures, honestly, right? I mean, if somebody's reading a comic book, people are oh, that kid's reading a comic book. But if you're reading a thick book, then people are impressed. They're oh, that kid is really thinking about deep concepts and thoughts and themes. But if you're just binge watching a show, a lot of that that prestige, it kind of disappears. I think that this is kind of wrong. I think that sure, I run this video series, I mean, not this video series, it's a YouTube channel called Janie's Bookshelf, which really emphasizes books, but I do not think that movies are necessarily bad or any form of cinema are bad. In fact, I think that lots of the time movies are sometimes just better because lots of the time movies can express things better than books can. I'm not saying that we should not read books. I think that books are still really important, which is why I'm really emphasizing it, because in today's culture I feel people watch too many movies and read not a lot of books. I think that lots of people, after they transition out of school, at which point they don't have to read any books, they just don't read books because they're busy with life, and all they do is read books for assignments, and that's it, right? I think that that's not a good thing. But I also think that we shouldn't have a complete ban on cinema, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today, because we can talk about individual books, but I also just want to talk about the overall theme as well of why we read. So first of all, I think that any type of storytelling way is amazing, and I think that that's something that we should be enjoying and appreciating. For example, movies. Movies, I think, are an amazing way of expressing themes and stories. For example, lots of famous movies, they're not famous because, I mean, some movies are just famous because they have cool action scenes and stuff like that, and those movies are fun, I guess. But there's also lots of movies that have some really deep themes, and sometimes the graphics or the animation or the characters or the actors or just the overall the being able to visualize it, not only read it, I think it's even more impactful for a lot of people, right? Because it kind of just really emphasizes the point better, right? Because at this point you're not reading the book and you're not imagining the characters, you're seeing the characters, you're you're seeing the characters, you're hearing the characters, you're seeing them in a real setting that's for example, you can read a book about Avatar, and you can kind of imagine I don't know, the flying the dinosaur thingies and stuff like that. But then if you actually look at it, it's on a screen and you see the colors and all that. I think that's more impactful, at least for me. And so I think that the point is that lots of the time movies just go above and beyond. There's this saying one picture equals 1,000 words. Honestly, I don't think that this is true. Sometimes one sentence can equal 1,000,000,000 pictures. So I don't think that this is true, but I also think that in some cases it is true, and which is why I think that cinema is not necessarily a bad thing. But what I think that we're seeing is that the world has gone so digitized that books are kind of left in the dust. They're left as this thing that is popular, right? Lots of people read books, a lot of people enjoy books, but increasingly we're seeing this move towards for example, social media, video games, and stuff like that. And I think that's bad because books I think still offer like more than movies in two ways. First of all, they make you kind of think, right? Movies, I think that movies also make you think. There's plenty of movies that I've watched and have just like left a lasting impression. And sometimes like throughout the day after I've watched a movie, I kind of think back on that. I think like it's even more lasting because like it's like bam, right? Like the movie you can actually see things, you can hear things. So it's lasting. But also, when you're reading a book, you're constantly thinking about it because your brain constantly has to process every single word, right? It's not just like passively watching. It's like constantly being able to like force the words into your brain, and your brain interprets that, and then your brain sometimes like, and then your brain like most of the time it like creates an image, right? For example, like when you're reading about like say two characters like walking in a park, I don't think that, at least for me, like, I don't imagine I don't think, oh, in this book, there are two characters walking the park. I don't, like, think that this is, like, a concept that I should know. No, I just visualize the two people walking in the park. I don't think about this as a concept, and I think that most people do this, but, like, it's much more active. It's not passive, and I think that's a good thing, because that really always makes you force, like, knowledge into your brain. Like, even if you're not thinking about it, it means that if there's a theme, if there's something that you don't understand, your brain immediately just grabs onto that. And even if you're not aware of it, unconsciously, you're able to better process things, right? Like, a movie, you can just watch while you're, like, half awake, but at the end of the day, you still know what's going to happen. Like, you still, like, on the next episode, you probably still know what happened. But for a book, it's very hard to just read it, like semi-consciously, like, being, like that, right? Like, it's kind of hard to do that because, like, it's just, like, I mean, some people probably do it, like, when they're drifting to sleep, but, like, at the end of the day, I think that, like, it's much more of an active process, and that means that it's, like, easier to understand all those things. I also think that, like, while movies are good in some respects, sometimes, like, there's, like, certain, like words offer another type of freedom, like, that the screen can't go. The screen can only go to the extent that it shows you what's happening. Now, I know the screen can show you what's happening very well, sometimes even better than the book, right? The scenery, the imaging, the characters, the expressions, the music, the feeling, the lighting, every single thing, the camera angles, all those things really emphasize to you, right? Like, you know when something is exciting, you know when something's sad. I think that's, like, really good. And sometimes they do an amazing job, but other times, books offer you the second, the third, or even the fourth dimension, right? It's not just like it's not just sadness to, like, incredible sadness. So it's sadness, and it describes to you how that sadness is. In other words, it makes it more tangible to the reader, to the viewer, and I think that's really important because things being tangible are super important for us to, like, process what's happening, right? Like, for it to, like, really leave a lasting impression. I think that's just, like, really true because, like, at the end of the day, like, when we're trying to read books for two things. First of all, for entertainment, and I think that, like, you know, books are pretty good for entertainment. And second, like, to learn things. And if we want to learn things, which is the main reason we read books, I think that at the end of the day, it's because it's more tangible. And therefore, because it's more tangible, we can, like, feel it better than if we're just looking at somebody's representation of it, which can only be so deep. Like, you can't feel what the character is feeling if you're looking at on the stage. Like, maybe you can, but it's much easier to feel that, much easier to remember that, much easier to understand that, and be able to take away the theme if you actually, like, have a more, like, four-dimensional understanding of, like, how bitter and how, like, sorrowful that pain was, and, you know, complete with, like, metaphors and stuff like that, right? And also, at the end of the day, and this is, like, an additional thought, I think that books are good because they kind of let you just step away from the rest of the world. The rest of the world is constantly busy. It's action-packed. Like, movies, for example, they have to cram every single detail. Like, every single detail, which, like remember, like, for example, lots of books are like, created into movies. It takes you hours. I mean, like, it takes you, like, technically days because, like, you know, you probably, like, you know, space the reading of a book throughout multiple days to read a book, but it takes, but they have to put that all into, like, an hour and 30 minutes or, like, 120 minutes, like, 2 hours, right? And that's like incredibly action packed. And I think that's good, but at the same time, it's very busy. It's like flashing lights and all that. And I think that sometimes just reading a book, being able to just look at the still words on the page, and being able to just think about it in your own terms, being able to process it by yourself, only in your mind, not somewhere else, like with like blue light flashing at you. I think that's just a experience that's getting increasingly rare in today's in the 21st century, with increased advanced technology and increased connectivity, which is not necessarily a bad. I mean, it's a bad thing in my opinion, but like advancing technology and increased connectivity are not necessarily bad things. But I think that if we just utilize them in a way that's not very good, it can really have a negative impact on one's life. And so that was the video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye!